Within a grand, circular hall marked with an intricate sigil, an elderly officiant stands before a young man and his father. The officiant's voice echoes, announcing the boy's revealed skill, summoner. The boy's eyes widen in sheer disbelief. He stammers, questioning the reality of the declaration, unable to comprehend why this would be his fate. His father, Lambert, addresses him with cold disappointment, confirming that his skill is indeed summoner. The man's shadow looms over him as he declares his son a forsaken child, marking that day as the moment the boy's life was irrevocably changed. The harsh memory causes him to stumble and fall in a sun-dappled forest. As he lies unconscious, a small, bird-like spirit flutters down, landing gently on his shoulder with a soft chirp. He begins to awaken, a bead of sweat on his brow, recognizing the familiar torment. That dream again, he murmurs to himself. Sitting up, he gazes at his own hand, the weight of the past settling upon him. He realizes that 5 years have passed since that day. His thoughts drift back to his childhood. Born the son of a noble, he had dreamed of becoming a heroic knight. He understood that in their aristocratic society, one's value was determined by the excellence of their manifested skill. The skill he received, however, was summoner. The memory brings with it the sting of the cruel nickname he was given, the forsaken child. He stands and watches his two spirits, the bird and a small imp, fly freely. He reflects that the spirits he summons exist outside the world's natural order and are shunned as evil. Because of this, summoners are seen as a cursed aberration, making his dream of fitting into noble society an impossibility. Holding the small imp creature gently, he smiles as the bird spirit, Hina, flutters near. He thanks Hina for waking him. He once despaired over the skill he gained on his 10th birthday, but now, he admits to himself, he has grown to like it. He reflected on how his spirits, his companions, had become his true emotional support. His avian spirit, Hina, could only use beginner fire magic, but she was always there for him. He also had other companions, Shiro, the spirit of thunder, and Kuro, the spirit of wisdom. They all granted him their power without asking for anything in return. A memory surfaced of time when things were different, a fleeting thought of what could have been. The recollection was abruptly cut short by a familiar voice calling his name, Raybart. He turned, startled to see his father approaching. "Father." Lambert smiled warmly, asking what his son was doing there and reminding him with a grand gesture that they were family. The young man looked down, flustered, insisting that his father didn't need to bow his head to him. Lambert's smile turned into a knowing smirk, a shadow falling across his face. He told his son there was no need for such concern. He could be at ease with his own flesh and blood. Raybart struggled to respond, attempting to express gratitude for being allowed to remain in the family home. His expression was strained, betraying a deep-seated anxiety. His father, however, seemed pleased by the sentiment. "A good attitude," Lambert remarked with a condescending air of approval. With his head still bowed, Raybart thought to himself that this was for the best. He felt blessed that, unlike other forsaken children with useless skills, he hadn't been cast out by his family. He looked up, declaring his intent to become stronger to protect his family. Lambert's expression hardened instantly. He questioned why his son was training with a sword, his gaze sharp and critical as he judged the boy's posture to be amateurish. He continued, his voice devoid of warmth, stating that whatever a summoner like his son attempted to accomplish would be utterly meaningless. The declaration left Raybart stunned and wide-eyed. This cold dismissal was a stark contrast to the facade he usually maintained. With a practiced smile, Lambert would claim he was simply looking out for his son, a kindness other nobles would not show. Deceived, a younger Raybart would bow his head and express gratitude for his wonderful family, feeling truly happy. But as he would turn and walk away, the benevolent mask would slip, replaced by a sneer of utter contempt. He thought to himself that if the boy was truly so grateful, he could at least make himself useful with menial chores. Fueled by this scorn, Raybart trained in secret. Deep within a forest clearing, far from judging eyes, he relentlessly practiced his swordsmanship. He was determined to prove his father's words wrong. He honed his sword skills with the belief that by combining them with the magic of his spirits, he could forge his own way to fight. This secret training was a last resort. He had once begged his parents to let him attend the dojo of a famous swordsman, but his father had strictly forbidden it, ordering him not to bring any more shame to their name. The memory of that rejection drove him to train until he was gasping for air. He thought that even being cast out would be better than living like this. As he paused, a voice called out, asking what he was doing out so late. He turned in surprise to see Aelia standing in the woods, her form illuminated by the faint light. It was his stepsister, Aelia Castanet, who, unlike him, possessed an excellent skill. She chided him for being out at such an hour, complaining that she always had to be the one to come find him. Raybart looked away, annoyed by her meddling. Her tone sharpened with worry as she asked if he had gotten injured again. He tried to dismiss her concern, insisting he was just tired, but she grabbed his arm, her expression showing she didn't believe him for a second. She presses him, her gaze unwavering, asking if he has any more excuses. His eyes shift away in defeat as he quietly admits he has none. In response, a soft, ethereal light begins to emanate from her hand, coalescing around her raised index finger with a gentle hum. She chides him gently, reminding him that she is always telling him not to be so reckless. He looks down, contrite, and offers a quiet apology. He reflects on Azalea's skill. Like his own, it is a non-combat type, but hers is an overwhelmingly powerful healing ability, a legendary talent. This power, combined with her beautiful appearance, has earned her high praise in society and brought great renown to their family. He considers the vast difference between them, like heaven and earth. She possesses a skill of immense, undeniable value. The pain of comparing himself to such a person is sharp. He recalls that Aelia has healed his wounds more times than he can count. He remembers her sitting on a log one night, remarking on how troublesome he was. She noted the late hour and the time it took to heal him, but concluded with a gentle smile that she did it because she was kind. Her voice pulls him back to the present. With a determined expression, she declares that from this point forward, she will give him a special kind of healing. Raybart examines a small cut on his finger, remarking that he's sorry but can usually handle such minor injuries himself. Aelia puffs her cheeks out in annoyance, scolding him for not growing up despite his recent growth spurt. She tells him to stop apologizing so readily. She insists she's only helping because she wants to cooperate with him, and that he should be saying thank you, not sorry. Later, in a sun-dappled forest clearing, Raybart finds Aelia sitting alone on a fallen log. He calls out her name, and she jumps, flustered, exclaiming that she only came because she had other business to attend to. He approaches, asking why she participated in the ogre subjugation. Aelia dismisses his concern, stating that joining a C-rank subjugation is hardly a big deal. She adds that the nobles probably dislike her for her skill anyway. His expression shifts to one of shock as she looks at him intently, asking if he also thinks she's a bad person. He quickly calls out her name, trying to stop her as she turns and walks away from him down the forest path. She pauses, her face turned away, and quietly says, "You're welcome." She adds that she's counting on him, leaving Raybart looking surprised by her sudden sincerity. The scene shifts to the exterior of a grand manor at night, as an unseen person thanks Raybart for his help. Inside a well-stocked workshop, a kind-faced, bearded man apologizes to Raybart for making him work alone and so late. Raybart, seated at a bench, smiles faintly and replies that it's fine, as he's always awake at this hour, and this kind of work is all he can do. The man, Johannes, encourages him, saying that Raybart is very skilled and should have more confidence. With a final word of thanks, Johannes announces he is returning to the forge, and Raybart watches him go. He suddenly flinched, a sharp tremor running through the ground beneath his feet. Alerted, he looked down to see the earth cracking slightly before him. He saw his turtle spirit, Kuro, rushing towards him. Confused, he questioned why it had appeared so suddenly, as it never usually came out on its own. He quickly realized something must have happened. His attention was drawn toward the distant manor, a sense of unease growing within him as he stared at the large, dark building. Meanwhile, inside the building, a man with his head and arms wrapped in bandages stood on a balcony. His gaze was fixed on the grounds below, where another cloaked figure waited, and he noted his target's presence. A horrifying realization struck Raybart. The intruders were in Azalea's room. He roared out a command for a night raid, ordering his other spirit, Shiro, to grant him body enhancement as the white tiger materialized with a snarl. With his body now enhanced, he launched himself forward with explosive speed, shattering the stone of the balcony as he burst through the window. He crashed into the room to find the bandaged man, holding Aelia captive, a sharp blade pressed against her. He cried out her name in alarm. In response to the threat, Azalea's avian spirit, Hina, dove at the assailant with a sharp chirp. The man remained unfazed, his grip and blade steady. He then twisted away from a lunge by the white tiger spirit, cursing in frustration. Raybart, seething with fury, roared at the man, demanding to know what he was doing to his sister. Before the man could react, Raybart was upon him, driving a powerful blow into his side. The intruder grunted, stunned by the unexpected force, and struggled to maintain his guard, realizing he had underestimated his foe. Within the manor's halls, a fierce battle rages. A determined, goateed man in a dark uniform parries a swift strike from hooded intruder, his face a mask of intense concentration as their blades lock. The clash of steel echoes as the swordsman blocks a high slash, sparks flying from the impact. His agile opponent flips backward to create distance. Elsewhere, in a lavishly decorated room, Raybart stands defiant as his father, Lambert, holds a blade to his throat, coldly instructing his son to prepare himself. In response to the threat, a faint, confident smile plays on Raybart's lips as he notes his father's amusement. Outside the manor walls, a brilliant flash of light erupts as his spirit, Hina, manifests in a crackle of raw energy. The sudden surge of power does not go unnoticed. The goateed swordsman flinches at the sound, his brow furrowed in alarm as he wonders about the source of the noise. On the ground below, 2 armored guards are also alerted by the disturbance. His momentary distraction turns to fury. "You!" he roars, lunging back into the fray. He brings his sword down in a powerful overhead strike, which the hooded figure meets with their own blade in a deafening clash. The exchange leaves him with a gash on his arm. Cursing under his breath, he clutches the wound. A chilling realization then dawns on him. The sound came from Lady Azalea's room. His expression hardens, his eyes narrowing with grim resolve. He understands what must be done now that it has come to this. With his decision made, he charges down the hall. Inside her room, Aelia stands frozen, her face a portrait of pure terror as the swordsman bursts in, his blade raised not for defense, but for a killing blow. As the blade descends upon the terrified girl, a desperate cry of Aelia rings out. Raybart throws himself in front of her, shielding her with his own body. The swordsman's attack is unstoppable, and his blade plunges deep into Raybart's back. A raw cry of agony is torn from Raybart's throat as the steel pierces through him, a blinding flash of pain radiating from the wound. He collapses to his knees, the grievous wound in his chest bleeding profusely. With a trembling hand, he reaches out towards Aelia, weakly uttering her name as she looks on in stunned silence. As he slumps to the floor, the butler stands over him, sword in hand, cursing the turn of events and questioning why it had to be this way. A raw, agonized scream tears from Raybart's throat as he grips the cold steel embedded in his torso and begins to pull the blade out with his own hands. The butler stares, stunned, as the boy forces himself back to his feet. In the background, other household members begin to rush towards the commotion, calling out to Lady Aelia in alarm. With a final effort, the sword is free, clattering onto the stone floor. Raybart looks up, bloodied but relieved, believing for a moment that he has overcome the attack. The strain proves too much. His strength vanishes, and his body goes limp, falling backward through the air as Aelia screams his name in pure terror. She lunges forward, hands outstretched, her face a mask of horror as she pleads for him not to leave her. His consciousness fades into darkness, Aelia's desperate cry for her brother echoing as the last thing he hears. A single drop falls in the void. The sensation of a drop of sweat rolling down his temple pulls him from the nightmare. He lies in a bed, face contorted in pain from the lingering memory. His eyes snap open. He pushes himself up, surveying his surroundings. The cold stone walls and a barred gate confirm his new reality. He is in a dungeon. He sat on the cold stone floor, a hand pressed to his temple as consciousness returned. From the shadows beyond the cell bars, a voice cut through the silence, asking if he had finally woken up. Looking up in confusion, he could only mutter why. The source of the voice was revealed. His own father, Lambert, stood before the cell, his expression one of cold disappointment. The steward, Agnes, stood just behind him. Lambert addressed his son directly, stating he never thought his kindness would be repaid in such a malicious way. His son's confusion hardened into defiant fury. With gritted teeth and eyes blazing with betrayal, Raybart declared that he would endure this no longer. In response, Lambert's features tightened, his gaze turning into a venomous glare. With a grim expression, Lambert speaks a single name into the tense silence. Raybart. The name hangs in the air of a stone dungeon where Raybart looks up, bewildered. Before him stand his father, Agnes, and an armored guard. A distraught woman sits on the cell's cot. Lambert makes a cold declaration. I'm going to punish you. Raybart can only manage a confused utterance in response. At Lambert's words, the woman on the cot springs to her feet, her body coiled with sudden, furious energy. She lunges towards the bars of the cell, her face a mask of rage as she screams Raybart's name. Behind her, a small boy watches the outburst with wide, terrified eyes. Her voice trembles with fury as she spits out her accusation. You ingrate. A sharp crack echoes through the dungeon as her hand connects with Raybart's face, snapping his head to the side. She follows through with the slap, her entire body conveying the depth of her rage. Before she can strike again, Lambert's hand darts out, seizing her wrist. Stop it, he commands firmly. The woman looks at him, pleading, but he warns that any more will only hurt her own hand. He turns his severe gaze back to Raybart on the floor. Lambert states that no matter how much he pities the boy, he has no intention of abandoning him. He adds, however, that he never imagined his kindness would be repaid with such enmity. Stunned by the accusation and the assault, Raybart looks up, blood trickling from his lip. What do you mean? He asks, his voice filled with confusion. He recalls the moment of the attack, shielding someone from a powerful blow. His only thought was that he had to help Aelia. The memory fades, leaving him kneeling in his cell, bruised and bewildered. He cannot comprehend what his father is saying. His father, Lambert, looks down on him with contempt, questioning how he can feign ignorance. He states that if Raybart had not done something so unnecessary, he would not have been driven to such an act of assassination. He struggles to process the accusation. Everything he did, fighting to protect Aelia, all that time and effort, was it all unnecessary? As Raybart reels from the words, a knight in full armor rushes forward, calling out to his master. The steward, Agnes, tries to stop him, declaring his interference to be rude. The knight insists that Raybart's actions were not unnecessary. The knight pleads with Lambert, begging to be heard. He argues that after such a vicious assassination attempt, only Raybart could have stopped the attacker. Lambert furiously silences him, shouting that Raybart is a useless disappointment. The knight, undeterred, insists that is not true. Before the knight can continue, the distraught woman shoves past the men, declaring that none of that matters. With fury in her eyes, she proclaims that the most important thing is the indelible scar left on Aelia. Her words strike Raybart with the force of a physical blow. He looks up in shock, realizing that because of him, a scar remains. He remembers that moment, how the man's magic had grazed her. He had been certain that a noble lady's dignity would be lost if she were scarred, but he also knew Aelia could use healing magic. Any wound should have been healed immediately. The horrifying truth dawns on him. A gasp escapes his lips as he understands the implication. He remembered her desperate cry, the pieces clicking into place with sickening clarity. He finally understood. Aelia had prioritized his treatment over her own. The weight of that choice crashed down upon him. His father's voice cut through his despair, declaring that because of him, Aelia had lost her bright future. Lambert looked down on his son with utter disdain, demanding to know if Raybart finally understood the consequences of his recklessness, even as Azalea's concerned voice called out his name. A young man in armor rushes to Raybart's side, calling out to him with concern. Raybart, with fresh cuts and blood on his face and neck, offers a faint, pained smile and reassures the guard, thanking him and saying he is fine. He then turns away from the guard and bows deeply, formally stating that he is truly sorry for what has happened. His apology is directed at his father, Lambert, who looks down on him with cold disdain. Lambert declares that Raybart bears the responsibility for this situation and commands him to leave the house. Raybart's expression crumples in despair at the harsh decree. Following the order, Raybart departs, carrying his few belongings in a large sack slung over his shoulder. The armored guard watches him go, protesting aloud that it isn't right, knowing of Raybart's strength and effort. The guard is distraught, lamenting the unreasonable situation and noting that even Johannes was present. Meanwhile, in a small, rustic shed, Raybart sits alone, reflecting that this is the first time he has known someone to admire him so. As he sits, the armored guard finds him. Raybart looks up, his eyes shadowed, but a slight smile on his face. He apologizes, adding that he is also happy. He then asks the guard a question, wondering if he would be willing to share his name. The guard eagerly agrees, stating he will answer anything he can. He introduces himself as Mark. Raybart quietly considers this, remarking that it is a good name. Looking up with genuine gratitude, Raybart thanks Mark, promising that he will never forget how he came to his aid. Mark is taken aback, questioning why Raybart is in such a state. A look of realization dawns on his face as he calls out Raybart's name, then his own, before urgently telling him to wait in the small shed. He rushed to reassure Raybart, promising to inform a certain Johannes of the situation. The guard was certain they would be allowed back into the mansion, insisting that Raybart's father couldn't have truly meant to banish him. With a final plea for him to wait, the guard departed, leaving Raybart alone in the dilapidated structure. As he watched the young man go, a faint, pained smile touched his lips. He had never imagined he would encounter such kindness at what felt like the end of his world. He stood alone for a moment, questioning if he was truly satisfied with this outcome. With a sudden, decisive movement, he tore a strip of cloth from his own shirt. He used a makeshift bandage to clean the blood from his neck, his mind racing. If he simply waited, Mark would undoubtedly reach Johannes, and perhaps life could return to what it was before, living within the familiar walls of the estate. But a seed of doubt had been planted. He considered the possibility that his father was truly serious, just as Mark had feared. His hand reached for the door, the metal cool against his skin. He stepped out into the night, a cloak now draped over his shoulders. The small spirit, Hina, fluttered before him with a concerned chirp. Raybart offered a sad smile and a quiet apology, and in response, the creature flared with a soft, ethereal light. Despite the spirit's display, his thoughts turned inward. He realized with a strange sense of detachment that being cast out from his home hadn't wounded him as deeply as he might have expected. It was in a way acceptable. The memory of his parents' words, however, still stung. He recalled his father's furious declaration piercing him deeply, while his mother stood by, her face a mask of sorrow. Yet, he told himself, there was nothing left to hold on to. But that wasn't entirely true. He clutched the fabric of his cloak, his composure breaking. He didn't care what happened to his parents, but there was one person whose fate concerned him. The image of Aelia, bright and smiling, surfaced in his thoughts. Her name escaped his lips as a soft whisper into the cold night. His thoughts drift to a painful memory, the very reason for all his actions. It was always for Aelia. He had only ever wanted to be someone she could be proud of, someone who could stand tall beside her. But as the image of her, bloodied and broken on the ground, fills his mind, a single, agonizing realization returns. He had failed. He couldn't protect her. The question echoes in his memory, a testament to his failure. Why? Aelia, in the quiet of the woods, Raybart looks up towards the sky, his expression serene. He calmly reassures a distressed, whimpering Hina that everything is going to be all right. A faint, determined smile touches his lips. On his forehead, a small, dark sigil has appeared. He remembers a moment of utter defeat, lying collapsed on the ground with his hand weakly outstretched. A silent vow forms within him. This time, he will succeed. Standing under a vast, starry sky, he raises his hand, cementing his resolve. He will become a person that others can truly rely on. Meanwhile, a traumatic memory surfaces in Azalea's unconscious mind. She cries out for her brother as she witnesses him being struck down by a shadowy figure, realizing the blow was meant to protect her. Her eyes fly open in horror as she collapses. Her eyes snap open in the present. Mark, the guard, stands at her doorway, calling her name. With urgency, she asks if her brother, Raybart, is all right. Mark tells her to wait, adding that he's glad she's awake and will inform the master immediately. She looks down, her expression somber. Mark, however, offers a reassuring smile, telling her that for what he saw, she has recovered enough to move. His companion looks on, surprised by the sudden shift in his tone. As Aelia follows him, his demeanor chills. He states that he was taking her to her brother's room, but then coldly remarks that her own treatment was minimal. He demands to know what she plans to do if something were to happen to Raybart. Stung by his accusation, she reaches out desperately, pleading for him to wait. But Mark continues down the hall, ignoring her completely. Ignoring the guard, she bursts through the doors to Raybart's room. Inside, she finds him lying motionless in bed. Standing over him are her father, Lambert, and the steward, Agnes. Lambert turns, his expression hardening as he questions her presence. A memory of pure terror surfaces. Azalea's voice cracks as she screams out, demanding to know where Raybart is and if her brother is safe. Her fear was not unfounded. Elsewhere, Raybart staggered through the streets, clutching a bleeding wound in his side. He gritted his teeth against the pain, wondering how far he had walked, his only thought being that he had finally reached the town. His strength finally gave out. He stumbled, his body crashing heavily onto the stone street. A concerned citizen, seeing the young man fall, rushed to his side, calling out to him and asking what was wrong. The commotion drew the attention of others in the street. Passers-by stopped, their murmurs filling the air as they gathered around the fallen youth, calling out in concern, asking if he was all right. But their voices faded into a distant hum. Lying on the cold ground, Raybart's vision blurred. A final, weary thought crossed his mind as darkness consumed him. Was this where it all ended? A distraught Aelia rushes into a lavish room where a body lies upon a bed, desperately asking if her brother is safe. A man with a bandaged face and a goatee informs her that Raybart has been expelled from the estate, causing her to stare in wide-eyed shock. The goateed man turns his fury on Raybart, demanding to know what he meant by asking for time and telling him to keep Aelia in the dark. Raybart, his own face a mask of rage and frustration, shouts back that the outcome is unchangeable. He was cast out by the master of the house himself. Hearing this confirmation, Azalea's expression crumbles into despair. She whispers in disbelief, questioning why such a thing could have happened. Another woman steps forward to condemn Raybart, accusing him of merely intending to jest. She claims he took things too seriously and acted rashly on his own, all while trying to spite them and hurt Aelia. The goateed man's face twists in a snarl, enraged that Raybart continues to argue. He gestures towards the main room where the body now lies on a sofa, declaring that if Raybart hadn't been present, Aelia would have been the one who died. Raybart smirks, dismissing the man's words as lies. He boasts that his own forces could easily defeat the household guards. The goateed man counters sharply, asking if the master of the house is truly aware of the guard's real strength. His confidence evaporates. Raybart clutches his head as the realization hits him. The household guards are an elite unit with experience in high-rank subjugation, a fact he now understands the master knew nothing about. He curses his own ignorance. Suddenly, a furious voice cuts through his frantic thoughts, demanding that he show some decency. It is Aelia. She commands Raybart to stop calling her brother a brat. With tears in her eyes, she declares that her brother sacrificed himself to protect her, and that he was neither a brat nor useless. Raybart can only stare, stunned into silence, as the other woman smirks behind her. She stands firm as the accusing woman speaks, agreeing with Azalea's earlier sentiment. The woman declares that the three of them, Raybart, Agnes, and Aelia, are indeed the most useful. Agnes, aghast, turns on the woman. He calls her a parasite and demands she hold her tongue, reminding her that she is being disrespectful to the master of the house, Johannes. His voice trembles with indignation as he continues, questioning if his master truly believes he is unaware of what has been happening. He cites his many years of loyal service as proof of his awareness. His voice rises to a shout as he proclaims that he has been secretly investigating. He presents a document, declaring it to be the evidence he has gathered against the true culprit. Before he can elaborate, a fist connects squarely with his jaw. The force of the blow sends him stumbling sideways, a sharp crack echoing through the room. He looks up from the floor, stunned, to see Lambert standing over him, holding the very document Agnes had presented. Lambert states coldly that this impulsive action is all the proof he needs. Raybart snatches the papers. As he reads, his expression hardens with fury, and he calls out Agnes's name. Across from him, Agnes looks on in sheer terror, crying out for his master. He roars for everyone to get out of the way, declaring that the man before him is a criminal and that measures have already been taken. As he speaks, Agnes grabs Azalea's arm, pulling her forcefully away from the confrontation. He faces his father directly and asks if he understands the situation now. In the background, an armored guard seizes Agnes, who struggles and protests his innocence. Raybart tells the guard he misheard, that the criminal is someone else. His father's eyes narrow into icy slits. He speaks with chilling calm, wondering aloud how this domain could have been managed for so long with such parasites infesting it. Lambert's face contorts in disbelief. Agnes, the steward, explains that Lord Raybart hardly worked, instead leaving the management of the domain almost entirely in his hands. The words contradict the image in Lambert's memory of his son diligently handling paperwork. He continues, his head bowed respectfully, adding that this was not all. Among the guards, Raybart was well known for his achievements in subjugating high-rank demonic beasts. A memory confirms his statement. Raybart in the field, fighting alongside a fully armored Mark, proving he personally participated in these dangerous missions. As Lambert struggles to comprehend these revelations, Agnes concludes his report with a stark warning. The domain cannot function without Lord Raybart. Nearby, Aelia listens, her expression clouded with concern. His boot steps forward with finality. And that is how we arrived at this situation, he states, his testimony complete. Having said all that needed to be said, he turns and departs from the room, leaving Lambert to his thoughts. Elsewhere, Aelia reflects on her own ignorance. She recalls Raybart's cheerful demeanor, how he managed the domain, fought monsters, and endured the scorn of his parents, all without letting her sense any of his burdens. Her hands clench tightly as a painful realization dawns on her. He had been silently striving all this time, and perhaps this place was never worthy of him. Looking upward, she offers a fervent prayer. Just this once, she pleads, let that man find a place where he can truly and rightfully shine. As if in answer, Raybart gasps and jolts awake. He sits up in an unfamiliar bed, disoriented. Where am I? He wonders, just as a door slams shut nearby. Looking down, he sees his wounds have been treated. He awakens to the sight of a young woman with short, light-toned hair looking down at him, her eyes wide with surprise. She asks if he's awake. He notices her staring and asks if there is something on his face. She looks away, slightly flustered, admitting that while she is used to it, it's still unusual. Changing the subject, she asks if he's feeling any better, explaining that it was quite an ordeal to call for a healer to treat him. He looks shocked, stammering an apology for the trouble he has caused. Overwhelmed and not wanting to be a burden, he insists he is fine and tries to stand up to leave. His body betrays him, however, and he immediately stumbles. She reacts instantly, catching him before he falls. With a firm expression, she tells him he is in no condition to be doing anything. Holding him steady, her tone becomes stern. She reminds him of his serious injuries and how he'd been sleeping without eating. If he truly feels any gratitude, she instructs he should focus on healing properly and then leave. She gestures to a nearby bowl of soup and bread, adding that if he collapses again, her efforts to save him would have been for nothing. He relents, sitting back down with a troubled look. She sits across from him, observing that he must have been in a terrible situation, but assures him she won't force him to talk about it. After a moment of silence, she introduces herself as Sasha. He replies, giving his name as Raybart. Sasha studies his fine clothes, openly wondering if he's a young master from a noble house who ran away from home. His surprise is plain on his face. Sasha quickly reassures him, explaining that this is the border city of Rasveria, a place that accepts everyone regardless of their background. Her expression then shifts to one of curiosity as she asks if he doesn't remember walking here on his own. Having arrived at the border city, a full day's journey from the mansion, Raybart sits alone in a room. He reflects on the arduous trip, realizing he never would have made it this far without Aelia's healing and Hina's regenerative abilities. As he contemplates his fortune, a soft sound from the bed draws his attention. The noise came from Shiro. The small, tiger-like spirit stands on the bed, letting out a plaintive cry. Raybart calls out its name in acknowledgement. He kneels on the floor beside a bowl of food, addressing the spirit. He tells Shiro it must be hungry and encourages it to eat, apologizing that he cannot offer a proper reward for its help in the battle just yet. His attention then shifts to his other companion. He calls over Hina, who is perched on his knee, and extends the same apology. He explains that while he wishes he could give them their favorite foods, this will have to suffice for now. As he speaks, Shiro cautiously approaches the bowl. He holds out a small morsel of food in his fingers for Hina, asking it to forgive him for the simple meal and promising to give it a proper reward again later. Without hesitation, Hina begins pecking at the offering while Shiro eagerly laps up the contents of the bowl. Watching them eat, Raybart reflects on their loyalty. He knows they're only this hungry because they understood his feelings and fought alongside him. He notes to himself that Sasha, their other companion, is not with them at the moment. Their hunger sated, both Shiro and Hina look up from their meal, appearing content. The sight fills Raybart with a familiar conflict. He thinks about how those called summoners are despised, yet he has received treatment and kindness, leaving him feeling indebted. He truly wants to introduce his spirits to others, but the fear of speaking honestly paralyzes him. His troubled thoughts are cut short by the distinct click of the room's door opening. The door swings open to reveal Sasha, who stops short with a look of surprise. Raybart is equally startled. As she begins to question him, asking who he is, he stammers in a panic, trying to deny what she has seen. He froze, his father's voice echoing in his mind with crushing weight. Raybart, you are a forsaken child. The memory of that cruel pronouncement, accompanied by visions of his father's disdain, paralyzed him with fear. But instead of the condemnation he expected, Sasha's eyes lit up with pure excitement. No way, she exclaimed, her voice filled with disbelief and delight. Raybart, you have a skill. Her delight only grew as she turned her attention to the spirits. Oh, how cute, she cooed at Hina. She was momentarily startled when Shiro let out a playful spark, but her fear quickly melted back into fascination. A short while later, Sasha led him through a large hall lined with countless shelves, a repository of records or books. Raybart followed hesitantly, still processing her unexpected reaction. As his spirits dissipated back into him in a gentle glow, Sasha turned with a hopeful expression. "Hey, Raybart," she began. "Would you be interested in helping out with some odd jobs at the guild? It would be a huge help." She clasped her hands together, a triumphant and slightly mischievous smile spreading across her face. The offer left him utterly stunned, able to muster only a confused "huh" in response. The next day, he found himself standing before the imposing structure of the guild hall, still dazed. "Why am I here?" he wondered aloud. He would later realize that this was the day his life began to change in a major way. Standing before the grand, arched entrance of a large stone building, Raybart reflects that he actually came. From the street below, Sasha greets him with infectious enthusiasm, thanking him for agreeing to help with the guild's miscellaneous tasks. He looks down, surprised, and quickly clarifies that he hasn't actually agreed to anything yet. Ignoring his protestations with a sigh from him, Sasha grabs Raybart by the arm and begins pulling him towards the entrance, insisting that it's fine and he should just come along. As she leads him on, she glances back with a confident grin, promising that there will be a reward if he helps out. He resists her pull, demanding she let him go. Unfazed, Sasha simply asks what he's expecting to happen. Her expression turns mischievous as she leans in closer, teasingly asking if he's perhaps a bit of a prude. Flustered, Raybart pulls away and shouts that he isn't expecting anything, urging her to just get on with it. He insists he is being serious, while Sasha watches him, quietly amused. Having successfully brought him inside, she throws her arms open in a grand gesture, cheerfully welcoming him to the Frontier Guild. The interior is a scene of pure chaos, like a battlefield. Sasha explains that the guild is desperately short-staffed and the amount of paperwork is many times that of other guilds, which is why she had to be so forceful. She elaborates that according to old tales, this city, Rasveria, lies on the border between human and demon territories. So many adventurers gather here to make a living hunting monsters. With the explanation finished, she turns to Raybart, holding out a letter and a small package. She asks if he would deliver them to the guild in the neighboring town, leaving him stunned. He stared blankly at the package in his hands, utterly bewildered by the request. Sasha, however, beamed with confidence, explaining that with his small spirits, even a simple delivery should be manageable. She added that she also needed him to pick up the guild's luggage from the neighboring town and bring it back. His confusion gave way to quiet resolve. He felt indebted for the help he had received and saw no reason to refuse. It was an opportunity, however small, to be useful. Having made his decision, he turned to his companions. He called out to Hina and Shiro, who was now in the form of a small tiger cub. The creature let out a cheerful cry, and Hina chirped in agreement. Nearby, Johannes overheard the exchange and scoffed, openly questioning whether such tiny spirits could truly be of any help. His skepticism caused Sasha to glance over, slightly taken aback. The dismissive comment did not go unheard. Raybart's expression hardened, his eyes narrowing with a silent, steely determination. Without another word, he turned and walked toward the exit, calling for Shiro and Hina to follow. He told them he was counting on them as they departed, leaving Johannes to watch them go. An hour and a half passed. Back at the guild, Sasha was buried under mountains of paperwork, sighing with exhaustion as she slammed a stamp down on another document. Her weary work was abruptly interrupted. Hina flew in through a high window, followed by the thunderous arrival of a now enormous Shiro, who carried a massive sack of goods. Raybart stepped in behind them, announcing their return and presenting the luggage from their destination. Sasha stared in utter disbelief, grabbing Raybart by the shoulders. She demanded to know if he had truly gone all the way to the neighboring town's guild and returned in just 90 minutes. He quietly affirmed that he had. Her eyes widened, a bead of sweat tracing down her temple. She was completely stunned. In the background, Johannes and another guild member shared her shock, their faces frozen in astonishment at the impossible feat. She stared in disbelief, questioning how he could have sent his spirits on such a long journey. She explained that the distance to the neighboring town's guild was a half-day's journey, even for a running adult, adding that she had never heard a summoner capable of commanding spirits from so far away. He simply smiled, thanking Hina and Shiro for their efforts. He marveled at their strength, noting that they had returned with a cargo heavy enough to require 3 grown men to carry. The guild staff erupted in a flurry of disbelief. Johannes stammered, pointing at the documents, while others exclaimed at the massive quantity of luggage that had been returned all at once. Examining the paper closely, Johannes confirmed with wide eyes that it bore the unmistakable seal of the neighboring town's guildmaster. From the shadows, Raybart watches as a crowd of men erupts into a jubilant roar. They throw papers into the air, shouting that they have finally been released from their own personal hell. One of the men approaches him, clapping him on the shoulder and apologizing for having misjudged him. He declares that Raybart is an incredible summoner after all. Caught off guard by the praise, Raybart can only offer a bright, slightly bewildered smile. Observing this from a distance, a young woman named Sasha looks on with disdain. She mutters to herself, questioning what kind of person this Raybart truly is, clearly unimpressed by the spectacle. The celebration moves indoors, becoming a boisterous party. The hall fills with the sound of clinking glasses and cheerful toasts as the liberated men, including Johannes, revel in their newfound freedom. Away from the festivities, Raybart sits alone on a stone step, his expression somber. He reflects that this isn't a celebration for him. He was merely a delivery person. It troubles him that they could be so happy over something so simple. His quiet contemplation is broken as he suddenly flinches, startled by an unseen presence directly behind him. The source of the disturbance is Sasha, who approaches with a wide grin and 2 large mugs. She remarks on his quick reaction and tells him the hero of the day shouldn't be sulking alone, offering him a drink. Raybart accepts it with a quiet thank you. She then calls out his name, getting his attention as he seems to drift back into his own thoughts. Her demeanor shifts entirely as she offers a sudden, earnest apology. Raybart turns to face her, his expression one of pure confusion at her abrupt change of heart. She explains that she's sorry, admitting she was angry because the others were making fun of his spirit. She apologizes again, saying she couldn't properly convey her feelings at the time. Raybart listens, his surprise giving way to understanding. He lowers his head, his hair obscuring his expression as he processes her words. Looking at him, Sasha observes that he gets angry on behalf of his companions, noting the strong bond he shares with his spirits. She calls it a wonderful relationship, adding that his spirits are worthy of respect. He lifts his gaze slightly, a quiet realization settling in. He was glad to have met her. Overwhelmed, he stumbles forward. Sasha catches him gently, a warm smile on her face as she tells him it's good that he's being honest. From the following day, Raybart began to assist with delivery tasks between the guilds, accompanied by Hina and Shiro. He quickly became familiar with the other guild members. After a week had passed, he was officially hired by the guild to handle various odd jobs. During one of his tasks, a guild staffer named Nas approaches him, holding a large, wrapped bundle. He offers Raybart some orc meat, much to the young man's surprise. Nas insists, explaining that Raybart's help with the massive delivery workload has been invaluable, and that this is merely a small token of their gratitude. He makes sure to mention that there's enough for Shiro and Hina as well. Now employed by the guild, he no longer needed to rely on Sasha's charity for a place to stay. However, there was a reason he still found himself living in her home. The reason was a perfectly prepared, glistening cut of teriyaki roasted orc meat. While enjoying a meal with evident delight, Sasha exclaims how delicious it is. With her cheeks full, she turns to Raybart and declares that her comfortable life would be over if he were to leave, and she would never forgive him for it. She adds that it's a relief he joined the guild, as it means he's less likely to be poached by someone else. Raybart understands the truth behind her plea. He reflects that, surprisingly, Sasha is completely incapable of doing any housework. He had taken it upon himself to handle all the chores as a way to repay her kindness. But this act has now led to her desperately begging him to stay, a development that leaves him looking utterly exasperated. The next morning, Sasha wakes up with a contented expression. "What a feast," she remarks, still savoring the memory of the previous day's meal. She then cheerfully asks Raybart if he's ready for another day of hard work. In a quiet room, Sasha awakens. She stretches, letting out a soft sound before reaching for her glasses and placing them on her face, ready to start the day. Seated at her desk, she is surrounded by towering stacks of documents. With intense focus, she writes at a furious pace, a quill scratching against paper, thinking to herself that the amount of work is as incredible as ever. Her focus is suddenly broken as she glances aside. It was known that Sasha was not suited for domestic chores, a fact that stood in stark contrast to her professional capabilities. This was because, as her colleague Nas explained to another, Sasha was a special-grade guild staff member. He emphasized that she was a truly special existence within their organization. The title of special grade was a nationally recognized designation, granted only to those guild employees who possessed a powerful skill, allowing them to handle an overwhelming amount of work. It was a position that came with great authority. For Sasha, this meant the sheer volume of her duties was always immense. As she continued her work, Raybart approached, placing a mug on her desk and offering her tea. She looked up, a bright, grateful smile spreading across her face as she thanked him warmly. His expression, however, suddenly hardened as he turned away. Taking a sip from her mug, Sasha noticed the change and asked what was wrong, wondering if he was busy. He turned back to face her, making an unexpected offer. He asked if he could help her with the paperwork. Sasha was left speechless, staring at him in stunned silence. Her mind raced, stunned by his proposal. She clutched her head, realizing she had impulsively accepted his offer and now wondered if it was truly all right. Her feet fidgeted nervously in her high-heeled boots. A moment later, she cautiously peeked out from behind a door, looking for Raybart. She thought to herself that he should feel free to back out if it was too much, but then defiantly challenge him in her mind to try and see if he could handle it. She peeked out from her hiding spot to see Raybart already seated at the desk, diligently working through a stack of papers. He sighed, noting the mountain of work still ahead. Her eyes then fell upon a small, turtle-like creature perched on the desk, and she wondered what it was. He turned his attention from the paperwork to the creature, then looked towards Sasha. He asked what was wrong, mentioning that this was his first time meeting the little turtle. The creature, Kuro, spoke up, instructing Raybart to offer a proper greeting. Heeding the creature's words, Raybart instructed Kuro to greet Sasha properly. Meanwhile, Sasha reviewed a document, stating that even if she could use her spirits, she wasn't expected to perform the same kind of work. Internally, she struggled with how to phrase her thoughts without offending him. Her eyes widened in disbelief. She stared at the massive pile of documents he had already finished, quickly verifying that all the information was correct. She couldn't comprehend it. While she admitted to herself that the documents she'd given him were relatively simple, she never imagined he could process them so quickly. She wondered if he possessed a skill similar to her own. Just then, Raybart looked up, asking if he had made any mistakes. She closed the distance between them in an instant, leaning in close and startling him. She demanded to know how he, a summoner, was capable of such a feat. Flustered, Raybart stammered for her to back away. His mind went blank, his thoughts consumed by her sudden proximity. His gaze drifted downwards, and he could only focus on her chest. Her question broke his stupor. "Did you just flinch?" she asked, confused. She then noticed Kuro clinging to her clothes and told it to let go. Raybart quickly explained that Kuro had lent him its power, a fact the small spirit seemed quite proud of. He calmly began to explain, placing a hand over his heart. The source of his power, he revealed, was an ability enhancement derived from attaching his spirits. Hina provided physical recovery, Shiro granted physical strength, and Kuro, the spirit with him now, bestowed enhanced intelligence. That was how he could process the documents so efficiently. Her breath caught in her throat. In that moment, she understood. He commanded spirits that were truly worthy of respect. Still processing the revelation of his abilities, she leans in with a confident smile and poses a question to Raybart. Has he ever considered becoming a guild employee? Her initial composure quickly dissolves into flustered excitement, leaving him taken aback by the sudden proposition. Her voice rings out with conviction, urging him to take the guild's recruitment examination as the grand facade of the guild hall looms. He finds himself swept up in the sudden turn of events, his mind reeling. He realizes with a sense of dread that not only has he been pushed into this, but the exam is scheduled for that very day. His anxious thoughts are shattered by the sudden appearance of a formidable man. The A-rank adventurer, known as the stalwart Balg, stands before him, weapon raised, and announces his intent to strike. Raybart can only stare in disbelief, wondering how he ended up in such a perilous situation. Sasha enthusiastically pushes a startled Raybart forward, expressing her delight that he has agreed to take the staff employment exam. He tempers her excitement with a dose of reality, reminding her with a confident smirk that he hasn't actually passed the exam yet. Her confidence in him, however, is unwavering. She turns back with a bright smile, reassuring him that he is more than capable and will surely become a fine guild employee. Her conviction stems from a change she observed in herself. After hearing his explanation the previous day, the very look in her eyes had transformed. With this newfound resolve, she hurries down the corridor, Raybart following close behind. It had been settled. He would take the exam to officially become part of the guild's fighting force. As they proceed, they're met by Nas, a guild staff member. He confirms that the exam is about to begin and offers words of encouragement, stating how reassuring it would be to have Raybart officially join their ranks, as he urges him to do his best. His kind words have a visible effect on the young man. Though still feeling some bewilderment, Raybart realizes he is happy to be surrounded by such warm and supportive people. His thoughts then turn to the person who brought him here. He worries that his presence and this path might only add to Sasha's burdens. He watches her as she stands before a large door, resolving that he must find a way to repay her kindness, even in some small measure. She turns back to him suddenly, offering a playful apology for her earlier eagerness. With a wink, she gestures toward the door, announcing that they have arrived at the branch manager's office. As Raybart stands before the branch manager's office, a large, powerful hand suddenly clenches into a fist on the other side of the door, startling him. The fist raps twice against the wood. From the hallway, Sasha calls out to the branch manager, and a booming voice from within immediately welcomes them. The door opens to reveal a mountain of a man with a broad, confident grin. He extends a large hand and introduces himself as Balg, the branch manager of the Rasveria guild. He stares, momentarily stunned. Raybart recognizes the name instantly. This is the renowned hero known as the Stalwart Balg, a former A-rank adventurer. He introduces himself as Raybart, here for the employment exam, and accepts the handshake. Balg's palm is incredibly calloused. The branch manager notes his tension, asking if he's nervous, and Raybart can only affirm that it's an honor to meet him. From the doorway, Sasha tells Raybart not to worry, explaining that the muscular branch manager doesn't mind such things. Balg lets out a hearty laugh, amused by her description of him. Her expression then shifts slightly, a flicker of concern crossing her face as she watches the two. Turning his attention back to the young man, Balg's demeanor becomes serious. He announces that it's time to get down to business with the employment exam. With a sudden, intense grin and a clenched fist, he declares the test. Raybart, you will fight me. The declaration hangs in the air. Sasha lets out a small gasp of disbelief as Raybart's eyes widen in sheer, unadulterated shock. Before he could respond, Sasha stepped forward, protesting loudly to the branch manager. She reminded him that he had explicitly stated the employment exam was only supposed to be an interview. Balg merely grinned, hefting his massive blade. He declared that a certain degree of strength was also a requirement for any guild employee, dismissing her concern with a confident, "This is fine, isn't it?" His decision was final. The group moved to the guild's backyard, where Raybart and Balg now stood opposite each other, swords drawn. From the sidelines, Sasha watched with deep concern, pleading for Raybart not to push himself too hard. He turned back to her with a reassuring smile, telling her not to worry. He felt he had to meet the expectations placed upon him. Facing his opponent once more, He listened as Balg laid out the simple rules for the test. For 1 full minute, Raybart had to do nothing more than continue evading his attacks. The branch manager added that Raybart was free to use any means at his disposal. With a sharp glint in his eye and a tightening grip on his sword, he issued a stern warning. Just don't expect me to go easy on you. The words sent a chill through Raybart. He steadied himself, his mind racing. He was a C-rank summoner who had only just managed to defeat a single orc. His opponent, though no longer active, was a former A-rank adventurer. He knew there was no element that could grant him victory. But this was only a test. All he had to do was endure for 1 minute. With his resolve hardened, he called forth his companions. Hina, Shiro, Kuro. At his command, the 3 spirits materialized from swirling energy, taking their positions around him, poised for the trial ahead. In a town square, the large, bearded warrior Balg rests a broadsword on his shoulder, a confident smirk on his face. He addresses an unseen opponent, remarking that so these are the spirits, and that they have a good look about them. Facing him, Raybart's expression hardens into a determined grin. He asks if he is permitted to use any means necessary to win. Balg, unfazed, simply replies, of course. From the sidelines, Sasha watches with wide-eyed anticipation, hoping Balg will live up to her expectations. With a fierce grin, Balg declares that it's time to begin. Raybart immediately seizes the initiative, shouting for Shiro and Hina to attack. The great white tiger lunges forward as the avian spirit dives from the sky, both unleashing their power on Balg, who braces for the impact. The combined assault erupts against Balg in a flash of energy and force. Raybart watches, stunned by the sheer power, whispering the warrior's name in disbelief as if he's already won. Through the dust, Balg's eyes narrow with intensity. He asks Raybart if he truly understood the meaning of his words. Before Raybart can react, Balg closes the distance in an instant, his powerful arm swinging back to deliver a devastating counterattack. The blow connects, sending Raybart tumbling helplessly through the air. Balg lands with ease, a broad grin spreading across his face as he comments on his opponent's impressive speed. His expression darkens as he raises his sword again. He warns Raybart that this time, he'll put a little more force into it. On the ground, Raybart's eyes widen in terror as he feels the sudden, overwhelming shift in the warrior's presence. Paralyzed, Raybart realizes that dodging any further attacks is impossible. His mind flashes back to the kindness of Johannes and Sasha, to how everyone had accepted him so warmly. This gratitude makes him hesitate, unable to fight back with his full strength. He gripped the hilt of his sword, his knuckles white. Was he to remain useless forever? The question echoed in his mind, a testament to his paralyzing fear. But then, a memory surfaced, the image of Aelia under a starry sky. He recalled her words, a quiet declaration that it was different now, that he had made his decision back then. That memory ignited a fire within him. His fear twisted into a snarl of defiance. He would not rely on anyone else. He would become human on his own terms. His sudden surge of spirit did not go unnoticed. A grin spread across Balg's face as he lunged forward, blade first. "Let's go, Raybart!" he roared, eager to meet this newfound resolve. He met the challenge head-on, unleashing a guttural roar that tore from his throat, a raw cry of determination and fury. The 2 warriors collided in a shower of sparks, their blades locked in a test of strength. From the sidelines, Sasha watched with wide, worried eyes, crying out his name. In the middle of the street, Sasha cries out Raybart's name as he and Balg fend off hooded attackers. With a sharp clang of steel, Raybart parries a sword strike, sending his opponent reeling. At the same moment, another assailant lands a heavy blow, knocking Balg to the cobblestones. As the immediate danger passes, Sasha rushes to the fallen Balg, anxiously asking if he is all right. Nearby, Raybart kneels, his expression hardening as he silently surveys the scene. She then whirls on Raybart, grabbing him forcefully by his cloak. "You idiot!" she shouts, her voice trembling with fury and fear. She demands to know why he's being so reckless, questioning if he understands the danger of a direct confrontation. Stunned by her outburst, he can only stammer that it wasn't his intention. Her grip tightens as she leans in, her eyes wide with desperation. "You could have died," she tells him, her voice cracking. Unable to meet her intense gaze, he looks away, insisting that she's wrong. His mind floods with a single, painful thought. He only wanted to meet Sasha's expectations of him. This feeling triggers a vivid memory from that terrible day. The image of Aelia, her hands outstretched in terror. The memory sharpens, focusing on her tear-streaked face, her mouth open in a silent scream. He realizes with crushing certainty that he hasn't changed at all. Sasha's voice cuts through his dark thoughts. Still clutching his coat, she shouts his name again, calling him a fool in sheer frustration. In a sudden, unexpected motion, he pulls her into a tight embrace, startling her into silence. "I won't be discouraged just because I failed," he says firmly, holding her close. Her anger dissolves into a flustered blush as he rests his head against hers. "So please," he murmurs, "don't worry about me." She holds him close, her voice soft but firm, pleading with him not to push himself so recklessly. From a short distance away, Balg observes the 2 of them, his expression unreadable. His eyes narrow as he replays their duel in his mind. He had intended to pin Raybart with the first strike, But he now realizes that from the very beginning, the boy's movements were already outside the path of his wooden sword, which he had swung away from Raybart's body. Returning to the present, he calls out to Raybart, his voice cutting through the quiet moment. He demands to know what the boy did during their fight. The question startles both Raybart and Sasha, who turn to face him with expressions of confusion. A moment of clarity strikes Raybart. His eyes widen as he realizes what happened, and he explains that he activated a dual enchantment. This technique, his ultimate trump card, involves simultaneously receiving two enchantments, a physical enhancement from Shiro and thought acceleration from Kuro. The moment the ability took effect during their fight, the world seemed to slow down. He could perceive the guild master's movements with unnatural clarity, as if time itself had bent to his will. Within this world of delayed perception, his accelerated mind allowed him to shift his body along the most optimal trajectory, effortlessly evading the wooden sword's path and leaving Balg momentarily off balance.